For millennia, a truth has been hidden in plain sight. Ancient libraries burned, temples razed, scrolls confiscated. Yet even as civilizations rose and collapsed, a whisper endured. That whisper spoke of a book not made of paper and ink, but of light, frequency, and encoded wisdom. The Book of Thoth. They told you it was myth, allegory, symbolic fantasy. But beneath those dismissals lies something more dangerous, an operations manual for consciousness itself. If this book were understood, humanity would never again bow to false gods, corrupt rulers, or systems designed to keep the mind asleep. Before we venture further into the unknown, take a conscious breath. If you feel a resonance with this pursuit of knowledge, consider joining our community by liking this video and subscribing. It helps this knowledge find those who are ready to receive it. Now silence the distractions of the outside world. Center your awareness. Let us begin the journey inward. Thoth, known to the Egyptians as Jehuti, was no mere scribe of hieroglyphs. He was architect of order, measurer of the stars, mediator between chaos and form. In later Greek traditions, he became Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great, the synthesizer of divine mind, divine word, and divine act. To the initiated, he was never just a god, but a principle, the intelligence that threads through the cosmos, translating raw essence into creation. And the Book of Thoth was said to be his greatest gift and most perilous weapon. Legends claimed it contained spells to command heaven and earth, words to commune with gods, and formulas to transcend mortality. The initiate who mastered it could speak with the animals, know the secrets of the stars, and open the gates of the underworld without fear. But here lies the paradox. In almost every myth, the book was hidden away, guarded by serpents, or punished when found by mortals. Why would wisdom that could liberate the human soul be encased in riddles and buried beneath centuries of suppression? To answer, we must look to history. When Alexander's armies stormed Egypt, they carried off not just gold, but scrolls and sacred records. The Library of Alexandria, though later burned, was rumored to hold copies of Thoth's teachings. Roman emperors appropriated Egyptian rituals but kept the manuals secret, recasting gods into saints, folding cosmic truths into imperial religion. Knowledge was no longer for the many, it became the currency of the few. And what was suppressed was not simple superstition, it was technology of the soul. The emerald tablets, attributed to Thoth, describe as above, so below, the law of correspondence. This is not poetry, it is blueprint. It tells us that every pattern in the heavens reflects a pattern in the body, that the structure of the atom mirrors the structure of galaxies. If one knows how to read the correspondence, one can reshape reality itself. Imagine peasants realizing their thoughts are architects of fate. Imagine slaves realizing the mind can slip chains that iron cannot hold. Could empires survive such awakenings? This is why the book was buried, locked in allegory, encoded in myths. The Egyptian priesthood understood the danger of open knowledge. They wrapped truths in rituals, where only initiates with discipline and devotion could glimpse fragments. But later, rulers twisted that restriction into domination, turning sacred secrecy into political control. What began as protection of cosmic power ended as hoarding of light. Consider the myth of Set-Nekamwas, son of Pharaoh, who discovered the book hidden in a tomb guarded by eternal serpents. He learned from it, but his arrogance cursed him. The tale is not just warning against hubris, it is allegory for how power without wisdom corrupts. And so, the story repeated across millennia. Those who stole fragments of the book sought domination, not liberation. And every time, the knowledge receded further into shadows, yet fragments still surface. The Hermetica, preserved in Greek and Arabic translations, carry whispers of the original. Alchemists of the Middle Ages guarded formulas of transformation that mirrored Thoth's path. Freemasons, Rosicrucians, mystics, they all claim descent from this hidden stream. Even modern science echoes its pulse: quantum physics, string theory, fractals, mathematics stumbling upon truth that Thoth encoded long ago. But why would truth need encoding? Because language itself was both prison and key. The Book of Thoth, as described in legend, was not bound in leather or papyrus. It was inscribed in the very fabric of vibration. Words were codes of frequency. Hieroglyphs were multi-dimensional symbols. To the uninitiated, they appeared as stories of falcons and sun disks. To the awakened, they revealed mechanics of consciousness. This is the suppressed knowledge, that myth was not myth, ritual was not superstition, God was not external idol. They were maps of inner anatomy, of the soul. The Great Pyramid, aligned to Orion, is not tomb, but resonant chamber. The rituals of Thoth are not spells, but frequency alignments. The book itself is not lost. It is hidden in plain sight, encoded in the architecture of sacred sites, in the resonance of words, in the geometry of your own body. As we peel back these layers, remember, suppression does not destroy. It only delays. Like a seed buried deeper beneath the soil, the Book of Thoth waits for those who can water it with awareness. And when it blooms, it dismantles illusions. The illusion of linear time, of separation between spirit and matter, of helplessness in the face of fate. The rulers of old feared this awakening because it would end their reign. Modern systems of power still fear it because it unchains humanity from consumption, obedience, and fear. This is why your history books mention pyramids but not resonance chambers, why your science textbooks analyze atoms but not the consciousness that perceives them. And so, we stand at the threshold once again. The book calls not from a tomb, but from within you. Each teaching we unravel is not merely history, it is mirror. When you hear of serpents guarding the book, see your own fears coiling around your potential. When you hear of the initiate cursed, know it is warning against using wisdom for ego. And when you hear of Thoth inscribing the laws of reality, remember, those laws are not out there, they are inscribed in the marrow of your being. The code that winds through the so-called emerald tablets is no mere collection of maxims or mystical aphorisms. It is a cipher, an encrypted map that instructs the seeker in the most direct science of existence, the science of consciousness. These fragments, attributed to Thoth the Atlantean, have survived countless ages because they were designed to endure. They were not written for kings to hoard in vaults, nor for priests to chant mindlessly. They were written in layers, words for the uninitiated, frequencies for the adept, and geometry for the awakened. The phrase, as above, so below, has been repeated so often that its depth has dulled. Yet within that code lies the entire structure of reality. It proclaims that every scale of being mirrors every other scale, that the cosmos and the self are one reflection. Ancient Egyptians inscribed this principle into temples aligned to stars, into the precise proportions of statues, into the rhythmic sequences of ritual. They knew that the body too was a temple, that the heart was a sun, the spine a serpent, the brain a throne. The Book of Thoth, in its encrypted form, was an instruction manual for aligning these reflections until they vibrated as one. But why the encryption? Consider the age in which these tablets are said to have been forged. Cataclysm had scarred the earth. Atlantis, where the continent or culture had fallen. Survivors carried fragments of wisdom to Egypt, Sumer, and beyond. The memory of misuse was fresh. Technology of the spirit had been weaponized, frequencies distorted to enslave rather than liberate. To release these secrets unguarded would be to hand fire to children. And so Thoth encoded them. A line of text could be read by the common eye as poetry, by the initiate as mathematics, and by the master as direct resonance. Take, for example, the tablet that speaks of man's unknowing bondage to the cycles of below. At one level, it describes reincarnation. At another, it is a diagram of vibrational entrapment. Souls locked in dense frequencies, orbiting like planets unable to break escape velocity. The code lies not only in the words, but in the rhythm, the repetition, the cadence itself. To chant the passages is to tune the voice as an instrument of awakening. This is why chant and hymn were central to temples. Sound was key, the tablet itself a resonant device. Suppressed knowledge enters here. For centuries, translators of the emerald tablets rendered them as allegories, stripping the practical mechanics away. Modern academia dismisses them as forgeries of the Middle Ages, convenient fabrications of hermetic scribes. But even if a scribe penned them in later centuries, what did he encode? The geometry, the rhythm, the correspondences? They do not belong to medieval imagination. They echo the oldest temples of Egypt and the star maps of pre-dynastic stone circles. Dismissal became the perfect cover. Label them forgery, and no one looks deeper. Hide the gold by calling it clay. Yet seekers always sensed more. Alchemists read in the tablets instructions not for literal gold, but for inner transmutation, turning the lead of ignorance into the gold of illumination. Mystics found in the phrase, "rise from darkness into light," a literal exercise. Shifting frequency, breaking the hold of despair, entering states of expanded vision. To those who experimented, the tablets worked. They healed. They transformed. And this is the greatest clue. Falsehoods do not transform lives, codes of truth do. Even modern science unwittingly validates the code. Quantum entanglement, holographic theory, fractal geometry, all affirm that the whole is mirrored in the part, that information of the total exists in each fragment. As above, so below is no metaphor. It is quantum law. Consciousness collapses probability into matter. Thought vibrates and reality conforms. Thoth inscribed what physicists are only now rediscovering in particle accelerators and supercomputers. But suppression continues. Universities categorize hermetic texts as curiosities of philosophy, never granting them the weight of science. Religions warn against them as occult temptations. Both create the same outcome. The seeker dismisses, avoids, or fears. And so the encryption remains unbroken in the minds of the masses, though the key has always been close at hand. Look again at the tablet's command. Seek ye the flame of the soul. What flame? To the untrained, metaphor for faith. To the adept, direct instruction. Focus inward, ignite the kundalini, the serpent fire that sleeps coiled at the base of the spine. This flame, once awakened, rises through the 7 centers, harmonizing body and spirit, opening the crown to the cosmic flow. The flame is not symbol, it is biochemical, electromagnetic, experiential. This, above all, is why knowledge was suppressed, because a human awakened to inner fire cannot be enslaved. consider also the tablet that speaks of the halls of Amenti. Historians call it fantasy, yet archaeologists have uncovered subterranean chambers beneath the Giza plateau, sealed for millennia. What if those halls were real? Temples designed as initiation chambers where resonance taught immortality. The tablets hint that Thoth himself entered those halls, regenerating his form, transferring knowledge to chosen heirs. Such claims, if believed, would dismantle the narrative of human fragility, mortality, limitation. If the masses knew that consciousness could survive death by design, how could any system of fear maintain its grip? And so we see, every line of the tablets is double-layered. For the distracted, a story. For the curious, a riddle. For the awakened, a key. This tiered encryption is not accident. It is safeguard. Yet in the age of awakening, the code begins to sing again. When one reads not only with eyes but with vibration, the tablets shift from text to tuning fork, harmonizing the seeker to frequencies long buried beneath centuries of dust and denial. As you reflect on this, recall what we uncovered in the first movement of our journey. Knowledge was not destroyed, only hidden. The Book of Thoth exists still, not as papyrus or parchment, but as coded resonance embedded in symbols, temples, and the very rhythm of the emerald tablets. It is there for those with courage to see, for those willing to decode not only the text, but themselves. Sound, vibration, resonance. These are not poetic ornaments in the language of the ancients. They are the very mechanisms by which reality itself is woven. To the Egyptians, and to Thoth most of all, sound was creation. The universe was spoken, sung, resonated into existence. When the Book of Thoth spoke of words of power, it was not describing metaphor, but precise vibrational sequences that alter the geometry of the field. To know the right word, intoned in the right frequency, was to command matter and spirit alike. This truth hides in plain sight across traditions. In the Vedic hymns of India, the syllable Om is called the primal sound. In the Gospel of John, the opening verse insists, "In the beginning was the Word." Across cultures, the secret repeats, vibration is origin. Yet modern science, compartmentalized and mechanical, relegates sound to acoustics and noise. It misses the deeper law. Vibration is not byproduct of matter. Matter is byproduct of vibration. Ancient priests knew this and guarded it fiercely. Within temples, initiates were trained not only to memorize chants, but to resonate them with full-body awareness. The chambers themselves were tuned like instruments. The king's chamber in the Great Pyramid, when struck, vibrates at specific frequencies corresponding to human energy centers. To lie in that chamber and intone a sacred phrase was to activate an inner transformation, a rite of resonance. And here, again, we glimpse the Book of Thoth. The instructions were never written in ink, but carved in stone acoustics and transmitted through disciplined chant. The suppression of this knowledge was deliberate. Imagine if humanity at large understood that disease could be healed not by chemicals, but by sound alignment. Imagine if the oppressed discovered that vibration of collective voices could shatter structures of tyranny as easily as glass shatters before pitch. Such truths threaten hierarchies, and so rulers replaced resonance with ritual devoid of awareness. Hymns became rote, words stripped of tone, ceremonies drained of vibrational precision. The shell remained, but the power was silenced. Yet the core esoteric principle endures. Every atom vibrates. Every thought sends ripples through the field. Every word alters geometry. This is why the ancients spoke of spells. The word spell itself means to arrange letters, sounds. Spelling is literally spell casting. But over centuries, this was recast as superstition, witches muttering nonsense in forests. The truth was inverted so the masses would mock what once liberated them. Let us look closer at the serpent, one of Thoth's recurring symbols. The serpent's hiss is vibration incarnate. Coiling, uncoiling, it mirrors the waveform itself. In Egyptian symbology, the uraeus serpent upon the brow was not mere decoration, but symbol of awakened resonance. The crown center ignited by the rising current of sound within the spine, the chanting of secret names, the resonance of syllables, coaxed this serpent upward, unlocking perception beyond ordinary limits. The Book of Thoth, in its hidden pages, contained entire sequences of tones to awaken this ascent. We glimpse fragments of this in suppressed traditions. The Coptic Christians of Egypt preserve chants eerily similar to ancient hymns, though stripped of esoteric teaching. Sufi mystics whirl to activate resonance of the body as a spinning instrument. Tibetan monks chant in subharmonic overtones that mirror the vibrations of temple walls. All these practices echo a single suppressed truth. Vibration unlocks the gate. Modern science begins to circle back. Cymatics, visualizing vibration through sand on resonating plates, reveals that sound produces geometry. Circles, spirals, stars emerge from pure tone. The ancients did not need oscilloscope or lab. They carved these geometries in stone, resonated them through voice, and aligned themselves to cosmic harmonics. Thoth's book, far from superstition, was a manual of cymatic mastery. Change the tone, change the form. Why then was this knowledge hidden? Because resonance democratizes power. If a word, rightly spoken, can align body and spirit, then priest, king, and emperor lose their monopoly. If the oppressed realize their collective chant can collapse structures, tyranny shatters. To suppress vibration, rulers dulled language, fractured tongues into dialects, mocked sacred sound as nonsense. Yet even in lullabies sung by mothers, in hums of workers, in spontaneous song, the memory persisted. Sound heals, sound liberates, and now, in this age, fragments resurface. Experiments show DNA responds to specific frequencies, repairing itself under resonant tones. Water, as Dr. Emoto demonstrated, crystallizes beautifully under words of love, distorts under words of hate. We are water, we are resonance. What we speak reshapes us. The Book of Thoth encoded this long before laboratories measured it. Suppression remains in modern guise. Frequencies saturate your world, but not those of harmony. Towers, signals, noise bombard your cells, keeping you distracted, destabilized. Sacred frequencies, 432 Hz, 528 Hz, are mocked or ignored, while industries profit from dissonance. Is this coincidence or continuity of suppression? When you feel anxious without reason, when your mind scatters though you long for focus, consider, are you resonating with your truth? Or with the imposed vibration of systems designed to keep you asleep? The book whispers still, aligned to resonance, and the illusion dissolves. Chant with awareness, and your body becomes tuning fork of cosmos. Speak with intention, and you cast spells of liberation rather than chains of fear. Silence becomes power, not absence. The serpent rises again, and so, as we journey deeper, remember the patterns already revealed. The myth was never myth, it was encrypted mechanics. The tablets were not metaphor, they were vibrational codes. And now, with ears attuned to resonance, we can hear again the song beneath the silence, a song that rulers fear, but which no suppression can erase: time. Few illusions have bound humanity as tightly as the ticking of the clock, the march of hours, the straight line from birth to death. And yet, in the teachings attributed to Thoth, time is revealed not as an arrow, but as a circle, a spiral, a resonance of cycles within cycles. The Book of Thoth, though hidden, whispered that time as we know it is a construct, a prison forged by perception, not by reality itself. The ancient Egyptians did not measure time in minutes and seconds. They measured it in flows of the Nile, risings of Sirius, phases of the moon. Their calendars were not merely agricultural, but cosmic, weaving human life into stellar rhythms. Thoth, as master of measure, was not god of timekeeping in our modern sense. He was architect of cycles. He recorded the great aeons, the turnings of ages, the breath of eternity breathing in and out of form. The Book of Thoth encoded the truth that linear time is a veil, a useful tool, but a dangerous illusion when mistaken for reality. Consider the Emerald Tablet's cryptic statement: "That which is above is from that which is below, and that which is below is from that which is above." This is often read as correspondence of realms, but it also refers to time. The future is hidden within the past alive in the present. Time folds in on itself. The initiate who grasps this is no longer slave to aging, decay, or destiny written by clocks. He or she steps outside the flow and sees all moments as simultaneous, all lifetimes as pages in one book. Why would such knowledge be suppressed? Because control thrives on fear of time. Fear of death, fear of running out, fear of lost opportunity. If humans knew they were eternal consciousnesses, temporarily playing roles in matter, the economy of urgency would collapse. Rulers could not sell you salvation if you knew you had never been damned. They could not tax your hours if you knew hours were constructs of mind. To enslave humanity, time had to be flattened into line, a line from cradle to grave with rulers standing as gatekeepers in between. History reflects this shift. The Julian calendar, later the Gregorian, imposed by Rome and then the Church, standardized time for empire. Festivals tied to lunar cycles were outlawed. Natural rhythms were replaced with mechanical clocks. Farmers who once sowed by stars now obeyed bells of factories. The suppression was subtle but absolute. Detach humanity from cosmic cycles and they forget they are cosmic beings. Attach them to ticking clocks and they become cogs in a machine, yet beneath suppression, truths linger. The myth of the halls of Amenti tells us Thoth entered chambers beneath the earth and returned ageless. How? By stepping outside linear time. Yogis speak of samadhi, states where hours dissolve into seconds, lifetimes collapse into breaths. Shamans step into timeless realms during trance, meeting ancestors and descendants in the same vision. These are not fantasies. They are direct experiences of non-linear time. The esoteric core is this: time is frequency. Just as sound vibrates at pitch, consciousness vibrates at tempo. To slow the mind is to dilate time. To expand awareness is to step outside it. This is why meditation lengthens life, not because it adds years to the clock, but because it frees the soul from identification with the clock. The Book of Thoth carried exercises, encrypted as rituals. For this very liberation, certain chants, certain alignments, certain states of resonance lifted the initiate out of time's cage into eternity's field. Modern science edges closer. Einstein proved time bends with gravity. Quantum mechanics shows particles communicating outside temporal sequence. Theoretical physics speaks of block universes where past, present, future coexist. Yet mainstream education still drills the illusion: you are born, you live, you die. End of story. To question this is heresy, though the very equations of physics whisper otherwise. Why such resistance? Because freedom from time is freedom from control. A society of timeless beings cannot be manipulated by deadlines, debt, or fear of death. They cannot be forced into wars before it's too late, or enslaved in systems of labor to save for the future. They live in the eternal now, sovereign, fearless, awake. That is revolution, and that is why the Book of Thoth was hidden, because in its pages, the very fabric of temporal illusion is unraveled. Imagine standing before the Great Pyramid at dawn. The rising sun casts shadows aligned with stellar patterns unchanged for millennia. You realize the builders were not measuring time, but anchoring eternity into stone. Each alignment was a reminder: you are not fleeting, you are cosmic. The suppression of this truth is why we now live chained to calendars, exhausted by schedules, aging in fear. But the book still whispers, step beyond. And here lies the challenge for you, seeker. Remember the resonance we traced in section 3. Remember how vibration forms matter. Now apply it to time. Your thoughts, your resonance, determine your tempo. Live in fear, and time collapses around you. Live in awareness, and time expands, becomes timeless. This is the alchemy of moments. The Book of Thoth, encoded in cycles of stars and chants of temples, offers not escape from time but mastery of it. The ancients warned, do not reveal this to the unready, for misuse can shatter the mind. Those who grasp eternity too soon may fall into nihilism, believing nothing matters. But the true initiate understands, if all is eternal, then every moment matters infinitely. Each choice ripples through all time, past and future, for all is now. This is liberation, not despair. It is empowerment, not escape, and so, the illusion of time cracks. As you read these words, feel the linear dissolve. Realize you have stood in temples before, read these tablets before, awakened before. And you will again. Eternity is not promise, it is present. The Book of Thoth waits not in tombs, but in your awareness, urging you to see the clock for what it is, a cage of smoke. Step through, and the eternal flame of your being burns, untouchable. The Book of Thoth has always been described as perilous, not because of curses or monsters, but because within its pages lie rituals capable of dismantling illusion and igniting godhood in human form. To the uninitiated, these rites appear as superstition. Words mumbled, incense burned, gestures repeated. Yet for those who carried the keys of understanding, ritual was not play acting. It was technology, a precise sequence of breath, sound, geometry, and intent that could bridge the visible and invisible. The Egyptians called it Heka, often translated as magic, but its true meaning was activated word. Heka was not sorcery. It was conscious alignment of human vibration with cosmic law. A ritual was the act of tuning body and environment into harmonic resonance with eternal truths. To invoke the sun, God at dawn, was not prayer to a distant deity. It was alignment of one's own inner sun, the heart, with the rising solar frequency. To utter secret syllables before sacred statues was not idol worship. It was resonance of sound activating the archetype encoded in stone. This is why every temple was an instrument. Columns echoed like tuning forks, walls magnified whispers into thunder, altars sat at nodal points of geomagnetic energy. When ritual was performed in these spaces, the human voice merged with Earth's resonance, bridging the personal with the planetary. The Book of Thoth did not list these rites casually. It encoded the mechanics of ritual as a manual of transformation. But power attracts danger. Rituals could liberate, but also dominate. A priest who mastered resonance could awaken his people or enslave them through fear and spectacle. This duality haunted every age. To protect humanity, the deepest rituals were hidden, clothed in symbols, accessible only through initiation. But when empire and priesthood fused, secrecy became weapon. Rituals of awakening were withheld, while distorted versions were fed to the masses. Ceremonies drained of power, repeated without knowledge, shells without flame. Consider the opening of the mouth ceremony. Officially, it was to animate statues or empower mummies. But encoded within was an initiation, the awakening of dormant centers in the human head, the opening of perception to higher frequencies. The gestures mirrored acupuncture points, the chants vibrated cranial cavities, the incense altered brain states. To perform it with awareness was to awaken clairvoyance, hearing beyond sound, vision beyond sight. To strip it of context was to leave only empty ritual, performed for centuries without the liberation it once carried. Or take the daily temple liturgies. To outsiders, priests fed gods with bread and beer. In truth, offerings symbolize resonance of elements, earth, water, air, fire, harmonized within the self. The Book of Thoth taught that by aligning these inner elements through ritual, the initiate became living temple, embodying cosmic balance. But over time, bread became bread, beer became beer, gods became idols, and meaning dissolved. The ritual shell survived while the inner fire went dark. The suppression of true ritual knowledge is not ancient history alone. Even today, fragments survive in distorted forms. Catholic Mass echoes Egyptian rite with bread and wine as symbols of transformation. Yet the esoteric context of inner alchemy is veiled. Masonic ceremonies echo ancient initiations, but are often performed without comprehension of their deeper resonance. Festivals worldwide preserve rituals of fire, dance, sound, but commercialized, they no longer awaken, they entertain. The book's mechanics are still here, hidden in plain sight, but inverted by systems that prefer obedience to awakening. The metaphysical principle is clear. Ritual is resonance embodied. When body moves with intent, when voice chants with awareness, when environment aligns with cosmic geometry, the human becomes bridge between worlds. This is why suppressed knowledge insisted, man is star-bound within flesh. Ritual was the technology to remember this. Now science begins to circle back. Neuroscience reveals breath patterns alter brain waves, chants synchronize hemispheres, collective rituals produce measurable fields of coherence. Group meditation reduces violence in cities. Drums alter heart rhythms, harmonizing groups into single biological resonance. Ritual works, not as fantasy, but as direct intervention in physiology and field. This too, Thoth encoded, ritual as practical metaphysics. Why then do modern institutions mock ritual as primitive? Because the true danger of ritual is empowerment. A society performing conscious rituals would not bow to hierarchy. People who gather nightly to awaken serpent energy through sound and breath would not fear rulers. They would taste eternity, wield creation, and collapse systems built on passivity. And so ritual was caricatured, witches muttering nonsense, pagans dancing foolishly, initiates branded heretics. Fear was weaponized to sever humanity from its most potent tool. But the book still whispers. The geometry of the pyramid still hums. The chants still vibrate. The rituals remain alive for those with courage to practice consciously. To sit in silence and breathe with awareness is ritual. To intone words of love with full body resonance is ritual. To dance under stars with intention is ritual. You need no temple, no priest. The temple is your body, the altar your breath, the book inscribed in your cells, and here the suppressed truth becomes personal. The ritual of awakening is not lost, it is waiting within you. Each heartbeat is drum, each breath is incense, each word is spell. To live with awareness is to enact the highest rite. The Book of Thoth is not locked away in tombs of stone, but in forgotten practices of your own being. Remember what we uncovered about time. It is illusion, a cycle. Ritual collapses time, gathering eternity into a single act. When you breathe consciously, you are not repeating superstition, you are aligning with eternity. When you chant, you are not echoing nonsense, you are tuning reality. This is the hidden ritual, not one act, but a way of being. To live as ritual is to reclaim the book. From the very beginning of our journey, one truth has echoed beneath every symbol, every myth, every encrypted teaching. Knowledge was never destroyed, only hidden. But the question that gnaws at every seeker is this: who hid it and why? To understand this, we must peer into the shadowed halls of power, where priesthood and empire, faith and fear, knowledge and control have intertwined for millennia. These are the guardians and wardens of the Book of Thoth, the so-called Wächter des Wissens. In Egyptian lore, these guardians were depicted as serpents, jackal-headed beings, or spirits of flame, dwelling in tombs and underworld gates. At the surface, they appear as monsters of superstition. But the deeper truth is that they symbolize institutions, orders of men and women tasked with ensuring that only a chosen few accessed the sacred teachings. The serpents coiled around the book were not literal reptiles. They were veils of secrecy and oaths of silence, enforced by both divine fear and mortal punishment. The priesthood of Thoth itself began as stewards. Their purpose was noble, to guard dangerous knowledge from those unready to wield it. But across centuries, noble stewardship decayed into monopoly. Initiates who sought wisdom found gates closed unless they bent to hierarchy. Knowledge that could liberate every soul was withheld in the name of protection. But in truth, it secured the priesthood's power. The very guardians became jailers. History repeats this pattern. In Greece, Hermetic texts were collected in libraries of mystery schools, but only fragments trickled to the people. In Rome, the imperial cult fused political dominance with religious ritual, appropriating Egyptian symbols while discarding their liberating context. The cross, the chalice, the ankh, all became repurposed, their true meaning veiled under new dogmas. When Christianity rose, councils selected which gospels would survive, which would burn. The Gospel of Thomas, echoing Thoth in its insistence that the kingdom is within, was banished as heresy. The guardians struck again, and yet fragments survived because knowledge cannot be annihilated. The Hermetica slipped into Arabic translations, then into Renaissance Europe, sparking the alchemists. Kabbalists encoded cosmic laws into Hebrew letters. Sufis whispered truths in poetry. Freemasons hid geometries in architecture. Always the knowledge resurfaced, cloaked, transformed, but intact for those with eyes to see. The guardians failed to extinguish it. They only forced it into shadows, where it fermented, waiting for seekers. But we must ask, are the guardians still among us? Look around. Information is everywhere, yet how much is noise? Algorithms drown seekers in distraction, offering 10,000 trivialities for every thread of truth. Sacred frequencies are mocked as pseudoscience. Esoteric teachings are commodified, stripped of depth, sold as entertainment. This too is guardianship, knowledge hidden not by burning books, but by burying truth in avalanches of meaningless data. Control has adapted to the digital age. The metaphysical principle is constant. Duality exists in guardianship. On one hand, there have always been true keepers, sincere initiates who preserve wisdom until humanity is ready. On the other, there are suppressors, institutions that distort truth for profit and dominance. Thoth himself warned, "Guard well the secrets until the time when man is ready." The tragedy is that guardianship was corrupted into gatekeeping, ready or not. Humanity's awakening was delayed, not by fate, but by design. Yet the wheel turns. The age of secrets wanes, the age of revelation rises. The very systems built to suppress knowledge now leak it. Ancient texts are digitized, rituals rediscovered, science inadvertently validates metaphysics. The guardians who once burned scrolls now face a paradox. In trying to control information, they have unleashed it to billions. Their veils grow thin. Still, caution. The Book of Thoth teaches that every liberation requires discernment. Not all who speak of light serve it. False teachers mimic the cadence of wisdom but peddle distraction. Institutions wrap ancient symbols in new cages. The final guardians you must face are not priests or emperors, but your own fears. Fear of truth, fear of power, fear of responsibility. For if knowledge is truly within, then so too is accountability. Remember what we traced in section 5. Ritual is living technology. The guardians feared not the symbols, but the human who embodied them. A ritualist who aligned with cosmos needed no temple, no ruler. That is why suppression persists even now. But as you see, the cracks widen. You are reading words once forbidden. You are awakening to what empires feared. The Book of Thoth is no longer guarded by serpents of stone, but by doubts within your own mind. And it is those doubts we now prepare to pierce. The veil thins. Across all the ages we have traversed, from the myths of Egypt to the fires of Alexandria, from the chants in temples to the hushed whispers of mystics, one truth has pulsed like a heartbeat. The Book of Thoth was never truly lost. It was hidden in symbols, veiled in rituals, distorted by guardians, and scattered across fragments of text. Yet here we stand, piecing it together again, not as antiquarians searching for relics, but as souls awakening to what was always within us. The book was not a book. It was a mirror. Every glyph, every parable, every chant reflected the structure of your own consciousness. When it spoke of the halls of Amenti, it was describing the chambers of your soul. When it warned of serpents guarding the secrets, it was pointing to the fears and illusions that coil around your potential. When it promised immortality, it did not mean endless flesh, but eternal awareness. And what is the suppressed knowledge, now revealed in full? That you are not a bystander in a cold universe. You are the universe, fragmented into form. Consciousness does not emerge from matter. Matter emerges from consciousness. Time is not the prison you believed. It is a construct, a rhythm you can step outside of. Ritual is not superstition. It is the technology to harmonize yourself with the cosmos. And sound, vibration, resonance, these are not curiosities, but the very tools by which reality is created and recreated in every moment. Why then did they hide it? Because awakened humans cannot be ruled. They cannot be frightened into obedience. They cannot be bought with promises of heaven or threatened with fires of hell. They see through illusions, through the fragile scaffolding of empire. The priest, the emperor, the corporation, all lose their grip when the individual realizes, I am infinite, I am eternal, I am creator. That is why this knowledge was locked in allegory, why libraries burned, why heretics were silenced. Not because the truths were false, but because they were too true. But suppression cannot last forever. Cycles turn, aeons shift, and now the age of remembering dawns. Look at the signs. Quantum science stumbling into hermetic law, global seekers rediscovering meditation, ancient symbols resurfacing in art, synchronicities accelerating as more awaken. The guardians who once kept the gates now stand powerless before the flood of revelation. The book is opening again, not in dusty scrolls, but in you. Awakening is not an event, it is a choice. Each breath taken with awareness is ritual. Each thought chosen consciously is alchemy. Each vibration you send into the field shapes the cosmos. This is a final synthesis of the Book of Thoth. It was never about acquiring secret pages. It was about remembering the authorship already alive in you. You are not merely reader of the book. You are its living continuation. And so the question returns to you, seeker. You have heard of origins, of codes, of resonance, of time, of ritual, of guardians, and of liberation. You have walked through cycles of suppression and revelation. You have felt the pulse of eternity beneath the illusion of clocks. You've glimpsed that every word, every sound, every breath is a spell cast into reality. What now? Pause, breathe. Allow the weight of what you have uncovered to settle into you. Imagine all the fragments, myths, chants, stones, stars, spiraling together into one radiant truth. The Book of Thoth was never written to be stored in tombs. It was written into the fabric of your being, waiting for this very moment when you would remember. The suppressed knowledge is no longer suppressed, because you have carried it across lifetimes. You have been priest and slave, ruler and rebel, guardian and seeker. Every role taught you something. Every silence prepared you for this hearing. And now, in this moment, the cycle completes. You are both the reader and the page, the initiate and the temple, the question and the answer. See how the illusions dissolve, time unravels, fear crumbles, authority shrinks. What remains is the flame, unchanging, unending, untouchable. This flame is you, the eternal consciousness that no empire can contain. You are the serpent rising, the pyramid resonating, the chant echoing across dimensions. You are the Book of Thoth incarnate, and now the choice is yours. Will you bury this flame again in distraction, or will you live as awakened fire? Will you let the guardians of fear silence you, or will you speak the vibrational word of your own divinity? Will you pass through this moment as a spectator, or will you claim authorship of reality itself? The knowledge is now yours. What will you do with it?